Hey, all, welcome to the Flash Quotes podcast. We are here to hang out and talk about one of the most common questions that comes up with the caterers that we're working with on a regular basis, every day, really, which is how do I hire the right people? How do I find people that believe in the mission, who want to do great work, who are willing to do this work that is oftentimes very hard, very involved, very engaged with people trying to represent your business? How do I make it happen? So we're here to talk about it today. We've got some different opinions. We have some different experiences, both in the event-based world, the corporate world. And so we just want to unpack that here with you and have a discussion. So with that, maybe we kick it off with you talking a little bit, Justin, about how you thought about hiring people as you started to venture into this level 2 to level 3 experience. We've talked about these levels before. And just as a reminder, level 2, you're working really in your business, not on it, and you can't see a vision to scaling beyond one or two events and carts and photo booths, and you want to level up. And to do that, you got to have people. So maybe you can tell us a story about the first few people you brought on board with Goodhart Coffee and what that journey was like.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. This is the hardest part of event businesses is how do you find, onboard, retain amazing people. We have massive seasonal fluctuations in demand. We may have part-time people, full-time. It is so incredibly difficult in this industry. Like any area of life, people are the source of the most challenges and the most incredible and rewarding things that you'll experience. So same is true here. Like you mentioned, Daniel, with levels 2 to 3, as you're growing your catering business, you've had so much success, often as an owner operator, that you've had so much success in sales that you have to go service more events, and then you're getting pulled apart. Your operations is pulling you away from sales, and then you actually might have a decline in quality until you can bring people on to help support everything. So step one, people always tap into their personal networks and word of mouth referrals from people they know. And that's amazing because you should. That's exactly the best way to find great, trustworthy people early on who will really believe in you and the vision and what you're trying to do and think it's really cool. You will tap out those people, you'll tap out your entire direct social circle. It can vary. I mean, it could take years, but it could be shorter than that, where, we reached a certain point with Goodhart early on where I was begging people that they had maybe been with me, worked a lot of events over the years, but they were ready to move into something else in the next phase of their life. And we were just so booked up. I would have to beg them. They would just leave me on red. They would stop replying because I'd constantly be coming back to them because I didn't know where else to go. I remember one time even we were so desperate for staffing for this one big event. I printed out these flyers and I drove around town for 2-3 hours and just handed out these flyers. I went into the coffee. I was trying not to be weird, so I went into the coffee shop, went up to the register, bought a drink, and then talked to the barista there and gave them this flyer and like, hey, we need event staffing for these dates. Like, here's the pay rate. I was absolutely desperate at my wit's end. And so this is a huge challenge once you tap out your social network. Yeah, how we finally, like, now we feel really good about we finally solved that problem. It took us a lot of years, a lot of iteration of like, how do you launch in a new city, or how do you bring on people who you don't know, who are not in your network? How do you find them, vet them, onboard and train them? And it took us a long time to get there. It's one of the reasons why we're so comfortable scaling to multiple cities. It's a big challenge.
It sounds like you've developed a playbook through many iterations and refinements over the years. So maybe we start with just give us a high level overview of the steps in your playbook from like I need baristas in a new city where I don't know anyone to they're fully trained and ready to roll. Maybe you could just give us like the high level summary, and then we could dig into any parts that are particularly interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. The high level summary is Indeed.com is where our searches always begin. I'm a big believer that I'm selling what we do. It's kind of, there's a lot of people that work in events. There's a lot of great baristas, but finding someone who can do both of those things can be challenging. So step one is writing an amazing description of what the experience is going to be and sell to your desired staff, sell how awesome it's going to be to work for you. I believe in that, not just like bullet points of like, here's duties, responsibilities, blah, blah. I'm like, no, when you join Goodhart, this job, you might get more appreciation from any other job you've ever had from the people you serve, because you're going to be serving delicious free coffee in an unexpected place, and you'll have unlimited snacks, and it's such a nice mix of activities. You get like the warehouse time, the chill driving time where you listen to music and vibe, and then you get the actual service time. It's not just standing around behind a counter bored for hours during slow periods. I'm selling it. I write a really great job description. That's step one. Post that on Indeed. And whether you're photo booth or whatever industry you're in, you have to have a great job description. Sell it. Make it sound amazing. Tell people what the best parts about this role are. Ideally as well, my goal is to always pay above market rate. I always want to be paying more than a cafe barista, for example, would be making. And we can do that. I can do that because I'm a contracted, like I'm a contracted coffee service, so I know where my expenses are. But I think the same thing is true. Events are hard. And so I really believe in making sure your pricing is appropriate so you can pay above market. That's an important part of bringing people on. So people see that high earning amount on the Indeed listing. They go in and read it, get an amazing job description. They're probably thinking, and we've heard before, this is too good to be true. Is this like a real thing? So we get a lot of applications, but you have to be filtering people on your absolute deal breakers. And this is very, very important. For us, they may vary by industry. I don't necessarily know the deal breakers of all the different event industries, but for us in coffee catering, you must be able to lift and carry a 60-pound espresso machine. You must have your own reliable transportation. And this one actually transcends all industries. You must have a minimum of 3 days a week availability in your calendar. That one is very, very important, and we'll get into that a little bit more. So, above market rate, great job listing, deal breaker filtering questions, and then we'll line up. We'll probably get about 50 applicants, reject most of them, line up 10 interviews. Some people bail, some people we don't think are a good fit. So then we'll typically bring on from 50 applicants to 10 interviews to like 2 to 3 people that we may bring on. But those people are going to be amazing because they've really gone through an intense filtering process. That's the really high level, quick overview.
Are the interviews in person, just phone interviews? Do you do video? Do you try and avoid video?
Good question. I do all video. I think that's very important for picking up, how's someone going to present themselves. I'm a big believer in the interview before the interview. People don't think this is part of the interview, but it is. Like, for example, did they answer all the filtering questions? I might ask, like, did you please include a photo of latte? Did they follow those instructions? Did they show up on time? Or did they try to present themselves well visually? It's all pretty standard stuff, but those kind of interview before the interview. So I do prefer video. One thing I think we do uniquely is, because of the filtering process that we go through, I got so tired of repeating the exact same 15 minutes description of the role and the company to every single person. So what we started to do is I recorded videos of that. And this is kind of another really useful filtering thing. We'll always send out those videos to people we schedule interviews with. So they have this 15-minute introduction. They can kind of see me and see the roaster in the background and hear our vibe and get the full explanation of the role through this 15-minute video series, and then decide. Like, some people will filter out themselves at that point, and it saves me from having to go repeat the same becomes very boring 15 minutes for me. So it saves me time, gives them the ability to filter themselves out if they feel it's not a good fit. But so many times people watch that and think, I want this even more. This sounds incredible. And then they come to the interview with even better questions, and we can have a much higher quality interview. So that's been a little unconventional, but really, really helpful for us.
Yeah. I think that's really smart. It kind of reminds me of some best practices from hiring in other contexts, right? Like asking them to watch a video. I would even go farther and suggest like, make them write a paragraph saying like, what did you learn from the video and what interests you about Goodhart or something? Because, maybe it feels a little bit tedious to them, but the reason that you do that is because it's like you said, it's filtering, right? What you don't realize if you've never hired anyone or been in the hiring manager seat is that any job description anywhere on the internet is going to get a ton of essentially like spam applicants, like people who just want to be able to like upload their resume and not to any job that they possibly see as potentially interesting and not do the work to like tailor it at all for your business or your role. So if you could just put in a little bit of pre-work for them to see like who's actually going to watch this 10-minute video and who's actually going to like follow the instructions and, you know, show that they engage with it and be able to explain, you know, in at least a few sentences, like why they want to work specifically for my company and what things like that. Just that alone will filter out, you know, a ton of the wheat from the chaff right away. And you'll just be able to instantly hone in on the 10-20% of people who actually are, you know, can listen to instructions and can follow, you know, follow directions and are willing to put a little bit more time and energy into your thing, as opposed to just like applying for every job on Indeed. Those aren't the people that you want. And it's not really worth your time to even interview them. It's a great time saver to filter those people out.
That's so well said, Zach. And people, I guess we don't ask for it, but people who do some sort of personal note directly about why they want to work at, like you said, directly about why they want to work at Goodhart specifically, those people always stand out and immediately go to the top of the pile, at least for consideration. Now, you both, but I think you both in previous roles and previous corporate experience, you both have had a lot of direct reports and have been responsible for hiring. Is that correct? And what were some of, do you have anything to add, or Zach, you added a little, but just enriching this, like things that can apply at all levels? I mean, obviously the specific roles are different, but there's so much that transcends just roles that can really be beneficial for any business owner or any hiring manager to learn.
Yeah.
I got one, Daniel. I'll let you add a couple more. So one I just gave is like the interview before the interview, give them some homework, just a little, just enough to make them put 15-20 minutes of effort into the application as opposed to just uploading the resume. The other little lesson I would say is that in my experience, it's better to bet on great people who maybe have a gap in the resume than bet on a great resume with a so-so person, right? Some of the best hires I've ever made were people who were like, they were maybe only the third or fourth best, like as far as the on paper qualifications, but they blew me away with their passion, their intent, their interest in the role, their excitement about the company, and their willingness to learn. Obviously, there's some non-negotiables, like you said, Justin. For any given role, you need to be able to carry the espresso machine, or it's going to be different for every industry. But you know, sometimes you may find that the person with 2 years of barista experience but a really great attitude is better than the person with 7 years of barista experience but a kind of a aloof or meh like engagement level. Listen to your gut maybe when it comes to your intuition with people, and don't get too hung up on just the on paper credentials or when you're kind of making your final decision.
That is so well said, because you can't fake enthusiasm and you can't teach people to be cool, but you can train job skills. And
Yeah,
so,
you can
yeah,
teach them to pour good latte art and all that kind of stuff and clean up the cart when they're
yes.
done, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, for us, of course, like in certain industries, we need people with prior experience. I need trained baristas, but I will take the one with a little less experience and worse latte art if there's a better personality fit and, enthusiasm for the role over the incredible world award winning latte artist who's just a grump, right? And doesn't really care about this role.
Yeah, I think an extension of that I've found to be really helpful is what interview questions you ask, right? There's so many standard rote interview questions that people are just going to be looking up online. Like, what are the top questions? What are the best answers? ChatGPT, give me a list of all the best answers. But giving people questions that make them think, that catch them off guard, is one of my favorite things to do in an interview, especially. I mean, you want it to be related to the job, related to, say, communication or thinking differently. How comfortable are they defending a position or a thought that even about a current event and what's going on in the world? I think as it relates to event-based businesses, somebody who's got that 7 years of experience versus the two, if the 2 years of experience is an amazing communicator and has a high degree of charisma and is somebody who very evidently is going to be able to represent your brand and your story and engage with people as they're making a drink or taking a photo, like that's going to be a huge positive, in my mind as it relates to interviewing. So I love curveball questions. Do you have any questions, Justin, that are maybe a little bit more unique but have had a higher hit rate? Like, okay, I've noticed this pattern, right, where if somebody answers this question this way, they tend to work out more often than not.
Oh, that's a good question. You're already practicing what you preach, trying to throw me a curveball question. No, for me, I actually prefer. I do like to. I think seeing people's judgment and train of thought in the moment is really good. So I do like scenario questions. Sometimes I'll think of specific, challenges that we've had of like I don't know what they are. I actually don't do the interviewing anymore, so I'm a little rusty. But maybe like talking through a barista, like let's say the site contact is late and you forgot the milk and there's a power issue. What might you say to the client to make sure that how do you tactfully handle this situation that you might be presented with? And so I love those ones where I think up some real adverse event or challenge that someone in that role at Goodhart has had, and I ask them, what would you do in this scenario, and just hear their real-time response. And that can be good because it's so obvious, you know, in that scenario, they would have had to think on their feet. And so having to give a verbal response, while not the exact equivalent, can be very, very powerful.
I think it's great to do that with like real examples of things that they may encounter on the job, right? As opposed to some contrived thing. The other one that jumps out to me, I can't remember who said this. It was on one of our, I think it was on one of our office hours calls. One of the Flash Quotes customers said, "My favorite trick for interviewing is I make them come and start pouring me drinks while I interview them," right? Because they just that kind of tests their ability to sort of multitask, and it's a skill that they need in their job, right? They need to be able to like socialize and chat with people and answer questions and think on their feet while they're executing the task of pouring the drinks. So that's a very very simple but kind of effective hack, it seems like, for putting someone into a simulated real world environment of the job and seeing how they handle it. And they're going to be a little bit nervous, right? Because they're in an interview. So I think that's a good way of simulating kind of a little bit of pressure or a little bit of a difficult scenario and seeing how they can handle it.
That one's I love that one. It's definitely pretty intense. Like you'll filter out some people, but that is so aligned with some of the wild stuff that can come up unexpectedly on an event that I think that's a great thing to do. We don't practice that, but that's real life event staffing. And so that's a creative one to filter people out or to find the gems.
So you get 50 applicants, we go down to 10 that you do interviews with. So what's that, 20% interview rate? And then of that, you usually end up hiring 2 to 3. So 4 to 6% kind of from top to bottom.
Yep. 2 to 3 start training, and they may not make it all the way through.
Yeah, so it's this grueling Goodhart camp. So what's the success rate there? Above 50%?
Yeah. And what does the training look like? Yeah.
Yeah, it is above 50% because they've had so many examples they've had so many opportunities to demonstrate their reliability, their poise, their professionalism, their thoroughness and attention to detail at that point. So it is quite high, I will say. It's definitely over 50%. It's probably 70 to 80%. Our training process, we've evolved it. We're still evolving it, but we do one warehouse training session where they come in. We actually have training videos, and this is maybe more than a lot of folks. We have an entire training video and quiz series. So it's typically, again, talking about filtering and having people invest and do a little bit of education. We have people watch this video series on how to set up the cart. They take a quiz on it, and then their first training session is come into the warehouse. And now we do kind of the hands-on practical portion and set things up and make the drinks. And it kind of goes on like that. Watch that's chapter 1. Watch the chapter 2 videos, take that quiz, go out on your event, on your second training session, which is now a real event, and you'll still be guided and largely trained. So we kind of do that where it's educational model or educational content a little quiz, and then the hands-on practical portion. And every training session gets more and more hands-on. And so it's 4 in total. And by the end of that, we're confident. Generally, by the end of that, people are feeling really confident, and they will tell us like, I feel good. Like I'm ready to go work a solo event now. And so that's worked well for us, and it's still evolving. But yeah, it was trial and error to eventually settle on this and then build out all the structures and content to be able to support it.
When people go out, do they normally go out with somebody who's already experienced? Like, is there any sort of co-training or?
Yes, these are all 4 of these sessions are with our top baristas, our top trainers, people who we really think embody the quality and reliability and ethos that we aim for. And so then the new baristas are getting calibrated to a high baseline and really understand expectations and quality better. And really the biggest for us, the absolute deal breaker biggest for us, and it's true, I think, of all events-based businesses, starts with punctuality. You've got to be on time, because we may be working with high dollar, high ticket contracted events, whether it's bar, photo booth, whatever. We are largely on-site services, high ticket contracted events, specific start time to the service, specific end time. And if you mess that up, you may ruin someone's very, very special day, whether it's a wedding or like a corporate meeting that's like very fixed, zero flexibility. There's like 10, 20 board members. It's an all hands meeting. It's happening from this time. So the consequences of someone who has timeliness issues is very high. Very upset clients. They may never hire you again. You may have to issue very high refunds. And so punctuality is just an absolute deal breaker. And just this week, this has not happened in a long time, but just this week, we had a new training barista who was late to their first real training shift on a real event. And we were like, this is not a good sign. Up to that point, everything had been going well. Great quiz scores, great feedback from baristas. Late to the first one. That's a big red flag for us. Was late to the next day as well after we spoke to him. And not just a little bit late, like we're talking 30 plus 40 minutes where they couldn't even meet at our headquarters anymore. They had to go direct to the venue. And we said, sorry, this is it. Like, unfortunately, this is not the right fit. And so that is the thing where I think we have the least amount of tolerance, especially in the training period. And the reason for that is because people are going to be on their absolute best possible behavior in those like first couple weeks. And if this is your absolute best behavior, I will hate to see how it's going to look in 2 months when things maybe start to get a little more relaxed. And so we have a couple things that are absolute deal breakers for us. Timeliness is one of them. Also, we've learned at Goodhart, those quiz scores. We give you very detailed videos with exact answers to every question we ask. And so if we see someone who gets a quiz score of like 70% or, basically not 80% or above, and even 80s low, the vast majority of anyone who cares is like 95 plus. So when we see someone get like a 78, we're like, this person did not watch. They paid very little attention, put very little care. Like we need to monitor what's going on here. And so yeah, those are some of the experiences we've had. And finally, what I also love about our training structure, because like you mentioned, Daniel, or asked about, we always are pairing these new people with a current experienced staff member, and it's often different ones. Ideally, it's different ones. Ideally, they actually meet and are trained by a couple different people. At the end of the event, we ask the trainers to tell us, we have some specific questions, how is their customer interactions, the quality of their latte art, into some industry specific things, some personality things. And then we ask about all of those. They rate them, the trainer rates them on a scale of 1 to 10. And then finally at the end gives just a binary, like, do you think this person is a good fit? Yes or no. And almost always it's great. It's 7s, 8s, 9s. Yes, I think they'll be a great fit. But occasionally it's 5, 6s, and a no. And so we're filtering all new people. In addition to that entire interview process, we're now filtering people through our team of trusted staff, and they have a good sense of what a good colleague might look like. And so that's helped us. That's usually the absolute last line of defense where we thought everything was good and then our staff catches something off and they're like, no, I saw this behavior, and actually, no, I don't think they're a good fit. And so far, 100% of the time, if someone on our team says, no, we don't think they're a good fit, we immediately like end things with them.
It makes it, I think that's a good segue to, yeah, the process of maybe if you do, accidentally, this all we've talked about is like protecting yourself from hiring people who aren't a good fit. But you can only do so much, and so inevitably you're going to hire some people who pass through all the filters and they still aren't great fits. And I think that's every service business owner's worst nightmare is having having the client have a bad experience or having someone that they hired kind of damage the brand or do a poor job. And they're also just probably really scared of firing people because firing people is hard and everyone's afraid of that and doesn't know how to do it. It's never comfortable. So maybe you could talk about what do you do when a team member makes a mistake in front of a client? How do you make it right in front of the client? How do you coach for improvement? And when do you decide it's time to let someone go?
Yeah, that's a great question. You will never have 100% success rate of always hiring amazing people. Even through our interview process, which I would consider fairly rigorous, and we have amazing people all over. Yeah, we still get those who slipped through the cracks or who started great and then, slowly deteriorated over time. And so you will always eventually, if you haven't already had someone who is, turned out to not be a great fit or maybe a little bit of a bad egg. If you haven't had one yet, you will eventually. It's just inevitable, like Zach said. First thing is, part of this can come back to if you feel that you've done everything you can with your onboarding and training, that I believe in really trying to take accountability. So when I have someone I feel is underperforming, I like to look inward first and say, how's our training? How's our accountability? How's our documentation and resources? I like to first look inward. Now, years in, we have very strong. So most of the time it's, okay, this is a clear performance issue. I am a very, very, very strong believer in aligning incentives. And so we have a bonus structure at Goodhart where after 5 events, every 5 events that you complete to good performance, you will get a bonus for. Now, just side note for business owners, I've like wrapped this into all my costs. I already, I start people that potentially at a lower hourly rate and then like calculate the anticipated hourly bonus amount. And so all my costs check out. You do have to kind of rewind and make sure that the bonus structure makes sense for your financials. But we've been doing that since day one because I believe in aligning incentives, in people being motivated to work toward the same things and receiving a great outcome when that end goal is achieved. So we have that bonus structure after every 5 events completed to standard. Every barista will get a bonus. And so the first place we start is here's all these behaviors. These are things that will not allow you to earn a full bonus and may remove the entire bonus. And so, of
What are
course,
those, like tardiness or?
yeah. Yeah, tardiness, forgetting items, not cleaning up, not setting up the barista who uses the equipment after you for success, all of those things. And so it actually impacts their income a little bit. We're not trying to be punitive. We're just trying to make sure that the client's success and the barista's success and our success all are pointing in the same direction. And so that's step one always. And so that's all, we're always looking out for that. And if there's something that's a pattern, for sure, that's what you really have to be on the lookout for, patterns of behavior. You need to coach people through the first times. Hey, we noticed this. I do need to see some improvement. Here's some documentation. Here's some training. I will actually ask for higher levels of accountability for a temporary period. If a barista, this just happened in Dallas, this new barista has been leaving carts dirty, and all the other baristas are really noticing it because we have such an amazing team there. And so we reach out and we say, hey, if this happens again, it's going to affect your bonus. Here's the videos on how to clean up and make sure everything is good. And for the next 2 weeks, we would like to see a photo of all the equipment that has to be cleaned after every single one of your shifts. And now, after that period, likely the issue will be resolved. So increased accountability, provide a reminder of the training, and let them know that it's going to impact their bonus potential if the behavior doesn't continue. And that solves for us like 80, 90+% of all issues right there.
How do you, I mean, so there you just have to have clear communication and kind of be direct and set expectations. Perhaps the answer to this is just don't be a business owner. But, you know, some people, when they're first starting out, might feel a little bit nervous. Like, I think this person's really good. I'm excited. I put all this effort into hiring them. They're doing okay. You might make excuses as a business owner for somebody because you don't want to deal with the conflict, or you don't want to admit that maybe this isn't the right fit, right? But I think what you find in a lot of cases is that keeping somebody around, or not, especially not saying anything, is like totally toxic for the culture. You just said that everybody else at Dallas is killing it, right? And so it's obvious to them what's going on. And I think you've learned through many experiences that telling this person straight up, like, this is not acceptable, this isn't up to our standards, this is how you need to do it, like, we want you to succeed, but if you don't step it up, you're going to have to go. That's going to make your team in Dallas flourish, and it's going to make the culture much better. And people sort of, they go down to the whatever the acceptable level of quality is. You get pulled down a lot easier than you get lifted up, but that's hard to do. What would be some words of encouragement for these business owners that are having to deal with this for the first time?
I'll throw one in real quick before Justin, which is, you're spot on, Daniel, and it reminds me of something my old boss used to say, which is, if you don't fire your C players, then all your A players are going to leave. So you can try and avoid it, you can try and kick the can down the road, you can avoid the hard thing, but you're really ultimately choosing, like, am I gonna keep my awesome people, or am I gonna allow the quality to degrade? Those are the only two choices, right?
That is so well said. You're passively communicating to your team that this is okay. It's super okay if this person doesn't clean up, and I'm not going to do anything about it. This is obviously not things you're saying in words, but it's what your team hears. They're not going to do anything about it. It's okay if we don't follow the rules. It's okay if we don't clean up, and it's okay if we do a bad job, and there's not going to be any fallout or repercussions. That's literally what they believe, and it's true if that's what you're doing. And I mean, for us in the events business, gosh, it's amazing what requiring or asking for a photo will do, because a lot of times people just either don't know or are careless. But when there's a photo, there's no hiding anything. And so we've started to really move that direction, because it gives so much insight, and sometimes almost this like forensic evidence, and like, okay, oh yeah, they like didn't do this. And it gives us so much valuable information, and people behave and perform differently when they know there's like a photo that needs to be posted to show some task is done. And we also do the same, by the way, for cart presentation. That's something that verifies service start time and verifies that the cart is fully service ready. Every barista, before every service start time, posts a photo of the cart, and 90% of the time it's awesome. And sometimes the new folks are like, oh, there's a couple things out of place, and hey, like, can you like just mix it or move this, adjust this, and resend the photo. And I think it's really helped us maintain quality at a lot of levels. So one thing I have not covered, which I feel so strongly is a critical piece for finding staff for your events business. There is incredible seasonal fluctuation, and we have our slow seasons, we have our extremely busy seasons. Here at Goodhart, we've had the month of May, we had, I think last year, close to 400 events in the month of May, and things dipped like 50%, over 50% again, down to 150 events in July. We had the busiest month we've ever had, combined with one of the slowest months, especially in stark contrast. And that is very, very difficult to manage staffing when you have those massive seasonal ebbs and flows. So I do want to share what we've learned, and I alluded to it earlier, about availability of seasonal or part-time people that you bring on. This is to me, the number one hack about being able to have a dynamic workforce that can fluctuate to meet high demand and can still do well and survive and make a living when it's during low season. And it's really simple, but you have to be very strict about this, in my opinion. Do not bring on anyone who has less than 3 full days a week of availability if you're looking for someone who's more part-time. The reason for this is if someone says they have 2 days a week of availability, that really means they have a full-time job and they're going to need one personal day a week, and then they'll have one day for you. And they have a very, very fixed schedule, because if you're working 5 days a week, probably it's some job that has a very fixed schedule, which inherently conflicts with the dynamic nature of events-based businesses. And time and time and time and time again, when we don't practice this, we bring on people who take forever to train, have no flexibility and availability in their schedule, and it just eventually they just fall off and slowly disappear. I don't know what it is, but people who have 3 full calendar days per week availability means maybe they're a freelancer or they work in another hospitality role, and the days they work each week are different. And so they have a lot more flexibility, and they might work just mornings, and they might morning some days, evening some days. I don't know what it is, but people with 3 full days means that then they'll have one day for themselves and have 2 days for you. And those 2 days likely may vary, which is really nice for your flexibility in the event space. That's been my experience. Try that out if you're having trouble finding people. And it's been a complete game changer for us, because then you can have people who have other part-time jobs and who are not going to, who have other income and can support themselves when you don't have very many events to give them. And that's been super powerful for us. In that same vein, the time to train. These things are very directly correlated. The amount of time it takes to get them trained and ready also needs to fall within a certain window, because we've found if we can get you trained in 2 to 3 weeks, that is a very, very positive sign for your availability when we will really need you. If someone takes 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks to get trained, what do you think that's going to mean for their ability to work actual events when you need them? It's not good. So those are some very important rules that we have ignored at times, very much to our own peril. Try them out, see if they work for you. But those have been huge. Some of our core principles when looking for event staff.
How do you think about distributing the available events amongst your available people? Is it just first come first serve to grab the shifts, or are you doing anything to try and make sure that everyone gets an equal amount, or is tenure and seniority part of that? How do you think about that?
This is very hard. This is more art than anything. Probably zero science, all art. What are the 3 things that primarily? Yeah, like you said, tenure, quality of past performance, and flexibility. I think those are the main things that will help you rise up in basically shift priority, because those are the things that make events businesses run. People who are super reliable, have great performance, who are very flexible, and so those, I believe, I need to refresh myself a little bit, but I believe those are the core things that determine shift priority. But you also, you have to balance it, because you do need to be giving these people enough work so that they can support themselves on your, working events for you, and their probably second part-time gig that they're also working. So if you start to not give people enough events, they'll say, I've got to go get another part-time job. And so it's very much a delicate balancing act to try to spread the love, but also reward people who've been with you, who have good performance and have a lot of flexibility. This is a very challenging one as well, and it's primarily art.
Do you do pure assignment of shifts? I know different folks that we work with, they'll use Connect Team or When I Work, these different platforms and softwares for shift management of teams. Do you use anything? And is there any concept of people coming in and claiming a shift, or are you assigning them? And do you prefer to have more control over that?
Yeah, so how we do it is we use Sling. I probably, if I were starting today, I would use Connect Team, because it's much more flexible and powerful and has great integrations with Zapier and can talk to flash quotes. So I wouldn't use Sling if I had it to do over again, but we still use it. I don't want to transfer everyone. So one thing that was a complete game changer for us is posting placeholder shifts so that people, even if we have no events on a given day, we post these placeholder shifts and then people can request or go and say, hey, I'm available for this placeholder shift. And that gives us a really good indicator that, that we will have staff on that day if we do have people who are going to book. And all events-based businesses can have this chicken and egg problem. And these are the worst types of problems where you can't get a booking because you don't have staff, but you don't have staff because you have no bookings. And so this part's really hard, the chicken and the egg problem of events-based businesses. And what we started doing was those placeholders. So we have staff tell us, and then we have a very strong indication if someone's inquiring on that day, but we're not sure. I do see that there's a placeholder shift. Okay, I'm just going to double check really quick. And then boom, like we could tell them, yes, we've got staff, everything's good, go ahead and book. That is a very powerful concept for us. And then when it's an actual booking, we do the same. We post it. We have various people go and say, hey, yes, I'm interested in working this. And then we look at, the past week or two to make sure we can do the art of just really fairly dispersing all these shifts so that everyone's getting enough and we're able to maintain a nice dynamic work pool that will allow us to accommodate the seasonal fluctuations of being an event business.
Have you found any of these kind of baristas that you've brought on, have any of them progressed to take on more roles or kind of get promoted essentially at your company? Or do you tend to hire full-time roles in a separate kind of hiring process? I wonder if they need that motivation or some path to grow with the company, or if that matters as much for these kind of flexible workers.
Yeah, it definitely is important to a good number of folks. It's both. There's people who have zero interest, and just always want to work events, which is great because hopefully we'll always have events. And that's such a personal thing, whether they're trying to progress in the coffee industry or just get, side some spending money for their trip to Europe next summer. So it's very, very personal. But of course, we have people who really do start to like it, really do start to want to progress and start to care a lot. For us, the most natural progression is from barista to like some level of operational support, or maybe even to like an operations manager. Actually, most of our operations managers started as baristas, and that's a very natural progression because so much of being a successful operations manager is really, really understanding the role and the logistics of what happens when baristas go out to service events. It's much harder, I
I got
will
to ask
say.
you the obvious question. What if I'm a level 2? I don't know what an operations manager is. So maybe
Yeah.
explain that role.
Good question. Operations to us, and everybody does this different. Like, please don't treat this as gospel, but what the division that we found to be useful is an operations manager is the person who staffs all events, keeps all products in stock at the warehouse, and oversees the maintenance of all equipment. Those are critical. Those are to us the operational pieces where we can't run without this. And reason we divided it that way is because we felt that there was an inherent contradiction in priorities between operations and stuff that starts to become sales, right? Like there's the getting of events and there's the servicing of events. And so for us, operations manager is from top to bottom, everything that happens after the event is booked regarding, how do they get their barista? What are the timelines? How do we make sure we have enough product? That's what an operations manager is to us. If you're level 3, 4, 5, you probably have something very, very similar to that. And those priorities are very different than, for example, sales and getting more events, because a lot of times, the operations people might be super stressed. Like, no, I don't want more events. Like, we're fully booked. This is so stressful. I can't staff the events we have. Don't book more events. And the salesperson is like, I'm not going to, I earn a little commission on some of these events. I need to book these events. And so there's just inherent, and you'll feel this, by the way, if you're level 2 operator or an owner operator, you already feel the tension of the success of your sales bringing you operations challenges and headaches, and then you're out serving events and doing operations stuff. So you can't be calling and emailing new clients that are coming in. So that to us was the natural division of like sales and operations roles.
I want to jump back to that, what you were talking about with Dallas and having a barista that was new and just wasn't, hitting the marks. You said something that was really interesting, which is that you heard from the rest of the team. You got a pulse that this was going on. Now you're, to your credit, like this level 5 operator now in multiple cities and killing it. As a business owner, it stands out to me that you were able to get a pulse on what was going on in one of your cities, in one of your warehouses. What
Where you don't
brought
live.
that? Yeah,
You're in
exactly.
Denver.
Yeah, you're in Denver. Like, great point. What brought that to your attention? Is that team meetings, or is it one-on-one meetings where those sorts of things can come to the fore and kind of give you a pulse of what's going on?
It was from an event report. For us, an event report is something that every barista completes after every single event, and they just share a little bit of info. We want to make it as easy as possible, but we need to gather some important information. Was the client happy? And on that, we ask about, did any equipment break, or is there any maintenance needs? Were things left dirty? And so that's where we start to ask all that stuff. Were your timelines accurate? We want to know that because it helps us learn. It helps the operations manager learn, like, are we grounded in the reality of how easy or challenging certain events are, and are our timelines accurate and checklists accurate? So we ask for that feedback from every barista after every event, and when they submit that form, it goes to a Slack channel. If certain conditions are met, we have different Slack channels that alert us to this stuff. We have our equipment maintenance one, training one, where, I can see, I mentioned quizzes earlier for new training baristas. I can see every single quiz score of every single training barista in one of our Slack channels. I can see the feedback that training baristas gave about the trainee in a Slack channel, every single one. I can see every single event comment, every single maintenance report, I have access to all that. And to my team's credit, those are only as good as the baristas filling them out, how much detail they are, how accurate they are, if they care enough to give information. And so we actually have to demonstrate that we take that stuff seriously so that baristas will actually tell it, because if they have the feeling that like nobody reads this, nobody cares, then they just start giving trash, right? Giving trash reports. So that's how I heard about it. Multiple baristas within a 2-week period, or within a 1-week period, said, hey, the cart is super dirty. And so then what do? We go look back. We know exactly who used which cart when. We track them down, and we say, hey, like we're getting these reports. We notice that there's some cleanliness issues. And so that's how it works for us.
It's interesting. It kind of feels like a lot of the conversation on measuring how well somebody's doing throughout the whole journey, whether they just started or they're well into their journey with your company, is them coming up against hurdles, which are your operational expectations, and either succeeding or not. And so it highlights the importance of these business owners to actually have operational thresholds and hurdles and expectations in place. Because if you don't, then if you don't have a report, you would never know this, right? You never have an opportunity for the baristas in your case, to say, this is what's going on and the cart is dirty. If you don't have training videos right when you start, or training quizzes, you don't have that additional hurdle. If you don't have people working side by side with some of your best baristas in their first 4 shifts, and a feedback mechanism to collect feedback, you don't have that insight. So I just think there's a lot of work as the business owner. You got to put these things in place, and you actually have to make it happen to be able to get these insights. Otherwise, you're not going to even know if you've hired the right person. I mean, that's a cool testament to what you've built so far.
Yeah, and I think all the stuff we're talking about today is why it's so scary and hard to get to level 5. Because if you don't have some of this stuff, you will destroy your reputation. You will give clients terrible experiences that you never know about, and it's
Until
scary.
you get a 1-star Google review, right? Or
Exactly. So we only have a couple minutes left, but I do want to highlight, Daniel, that was such a great summary. And I want to shout out and highlight the book called Good to Great by Jim Collins. It is a really great book. And I took this idea from that book, the idea of having what are called red flag mechanisms, which is exactly what we're talking about here. You need to have systems in place in your business to give you those red flags when things are not going well. And so through those event reports and through, training baristas giving us those feedback, and then those being, automated right to these Slack channels that I can see and check, those are critical red flag mechanisms to know when we are coming short and then to be able to correct it and improve. The same thing, that's why we ask for client feedback after every single event. And most of the time it's amazing and we then get an amazing Google review, but sometimes it's like so-and-so barista, we heard this too. So-and-so barista, they were on their phone the whole shift and they had an earbud in and they were sitting down the entire shift and people couldn't even see them and didn't even know they had a coffee bar. What? Like, this is embarrassing. I'm embarrassed. This is a phrase we use a lot because we make a lot of mistakes, but we always work to improve them. My go-to phrase when we make a mistake to a client is first a sincere apology. The phrase like, we're committed to making this right. And I don't know why it bothers me so much. The generic customer service phrase, I'm sorry for any inconvenience this may have caused. I think that is weak. I think you should say, I am sorry because we caused this big inconvenience to you and we're committed to making it right. And it feels like, I don't know why I'm so sensitive to that phrase. That phrase just annoys me. It feels weaselly and feels lacking accountability. We say, I am sorry for this convenience we caused you and we're committed to making it right. And we can only do that through red flag mechanisms, through getting feedback at critical moments. So hope you all enjoyed this episode. That's all the time we've got for today. Do you have any other questions that you want to know that we haven't covered in other episodes? Please email us, DM us, whatever. Just please let us know and we'd love to cover it on a future podcast episode.
Cheers, y'all. Thanks.